January 22, 1943. Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands. The dense jungle air hung heavy with humidity and tension. Shells had fallen nearby. The ground was scarred from months of conflict, and every shadow could hide an enemy soldier. Among the ruins of a small village west of Point Cruz, 2nd Lieutenant John George crouched silently, his breath slow and measured. Most officers had dismissed him. Why? Because George carried a weapon that didn't belong on a front line in the Pacific, a civilian bolt-action hunting rifle, a Winchester Model 70, fitted with a Lyman Alaskan scope. He had purchased it 2 years earlier with his own National Guard pay. To the Army brass it was a toy, a curiosity, not a proper military instrument. Captain Morris, his commanding officer, had even ordered him to leave the rifle in the tent and take a standard-issue M1 Garand. "You'll need firepower, not a fancy sporter," Morris had said. Fellow platoon leaders laughed at George's insistence, convinced that no semi-automatic rifle could be matched by a hunting rifle in combat. Yet George had a different philosophy. He understood something the manuals ignored. The advantage wasn't in rate of fire or magazine capacity. It was in precision, patience, and timing. For 72 hours, Japanese snipers had killed 14 American soldiers in the same sector. George studied the terrain, noting every tree trunk, every shadow, and every pattern of movement. His Winchester was slow to load, yes, but its accuracy at 300 yards was exceptional. He could place a shot in exactly the same spot again and again, something the Garand could not replicate at that range. As dawn broke on January 22nd, George spotted movement in the underbrush. A Japanese sniper was surveying the American positions, probably expecting another quick, panicked volley of fire from below. George waited, unblinking, until the man's head appeared between the ferns. One breath, one squeeze of the trigger. The sniper never had a chance. Word of his success spread through the battalion quickly. George wasn't just taking out enemy snipers. He was altering the dynamics of jungle engagements. The officers who had mocked him began to watch, quietly, as he demonstrated an approach that went against the Army's conventional doctrine. Patience over speed, precision over volume. Over the next 4 days, George moved cautiously through the ruins, taking positions in coconut groves, behind stone walls and atop ridges. His bolt-action rifle, combined with meticulous observation, allowed him to neutralize threats without exposing himself or his men. Each enemy soldier eliminated increased the safety of his platoon. By the end of the week, George's technique had saved an estimated 24 lives. His commanding officers took note, recording the principle that a carefully chosen rifle, used by a disciplined marksman, could outperform standard-issue semi-automatics in certain scenarios. It was a quiet revolution, a small innovation that no training manual yet recognized. Yet George knew the jungle offered no guarantees. The Japanese were skilled, patient, and adaptive. Each day he learned more about camouflage, sound discipline, and the subtle signs that betrayed an enemy's position. Every tree and shadow became a part of his tactical calculus. Every missed shot was a lesson in precision. By the time he returned to his tent that evening, drenched in sweat and mud, George had already begun planning the next day's moves. The lesson was clear. In jungle warfare, technology alone did not win. Observation, patience, and an intimate understanding of your weapon could make the difference between life and death. For the men of the 132nd Infantry Regiment, the presence of this civilian toy in combat would soon redefine their approach to snipers and marksmanship. What seemed like a quirky preference was, in reality, a tactical edge forged through discipline, courage, and ingenuity. The days following George's first sniper engagements were tense. Japanese soldiers had learned that someone was picking them off with deadly accuracy. Rumors of an unseen American sniper began circulating among enemy ranks, forcing them to change positions constantly. George, meanwhile, treated every patrol and engagement as a study in observation. He mapped the terrain in his mind, noting tree clusters, fallen logs, and the way sunlight hit the undergrowth at different hours. Every movement of the enemy became predictable. Every sound had meaning. And his Winchester Model 70, fitted with its Lyman Alaskan scope, remained his silent partner in this effort. Unlike the M1 Garand, which offered rapid fire but less pinpoint accuracy at extended ranges, the bolt-action hunting rifle allowed George to take single, precise shots. He could engage targets from concealed positions hundreds of yards away, then immediately relocate without giving away his location. The Japanese snipers who had terrorized his battalion for days found themselves outmatched not by numbers, but by methodical precision. On January 24th, George set up in a coconut grove overlooking a narrow ridge that the enemy used for observation. 2 Japanese snipers were positioned there, scanning the valley below. Other platoons were pinned, unable to advance. George waited, breathing slowly, measuring wind and distance. When the first sniper's head appeared above the foliage, George's shot dropped him silently. The second sniper moved instinctively, and George adjusted, taking him down before he could react. By the time the Americans reached the ridge, the threat had been neutralized. News of George's success spread through the regiment. Officers who had once mocked him began to consider his methods seriously. His fellow soldiers started to understand that precision shooting could compensate for limited manpower and constrained terrain. The principles George demonstrated, patience, concealment, and careful observation, became a model for other small unit leaders. During these days, George also discovered another unexpected advantage of his hunting rifle. Its reliability in the humid, tropical climate of Guadalcanal surpassed many semi-automatics that jammed in the mud and rain. His bolt-action mechanism remained consistent, and the rifle's scope allowed him to adjust quickly for moving targets. What others dismissed as a civilian toy became, in his hands, a tactical force multiplier. By January 26th, George's patrols had a measurable effect. Battalion commanders noted a decrease in casualties among infantry units operating in previously contested areas. His ability to remove key threats quietly and effectively allowed patrols to move and secure positions that had been too dangerous before. What had started as an individual experiment in marksmanship had begun to influence tactical decisions at the company and regimental level. Beyond the battlefield, George's success had psychological effects. The Japanese soldiers became increasingly cautious, slowing their movements and often abandoning positions entirely. His platoon, on the other hand, gained confidence. Soldiers saw firsthand that a single well-placed shot could protect many lives. Morale, battered by previous sniper attacks, improved steadily. By the end of January, George had recorded dozens of confirmed enemy eliminations and countless near misses that deterred ambushes. His technique was quietly shared among other platoons. Lessons learned in those coconut groves, patience, concealment, disciplined shooting, became informal doctrine. They would later influence sniper training across the Pacific Theater. When the 132nd Infantry Regiment rotated out of that sector weeks later, commanders recognized George's contribution as extraordinary. His insistence on using a civilian hunting rifle had proven that conventional military thinking sometimes underestimated the power of precision, observation, and individual initiative. In the dense, unforgiving jungles of Guadalcanal, the lessons were clear. Firepower alone did not win engagements. A calm, disciplined soldier, armed with the right tool for the job, could change the outcome of a battle. John George's innovation, born from 2 years of careful savings, personal investment, and a refusal to conform to conventional thinking, saved lives, protected American troops, and quietly reshaped how jungle warfare was approached. Decades later, military historians would study his actions and recognize a simple truth. Skill, strategy, and patience often outweigh volume and speed in combat. And sometimes, a mail-order sporting rifle bought by a determined young lieutenant could rewrite what the Army thought it knew about modern marksmanship.